Hey guys, it's Jack. I wanted to let you know that we're starting a new push for subscriptions here on Human Events Daily. So make sure that when you're listening to this podcast, you hit subscribe, you download it, and you share it with 5 of your friends. Make sure they're all going and downloading as well, because we need to get the signal out as much as possible. Look, we've done so much over the past couple of years since this show started, and we're only going to do so much more. Let's get it. This is what happens when the fourth turning meets fifth generation warfare.
A commentator, international social media sensation, and former Navy intelligence veteran.
This is Human Events with your host, Jack Posobiec.
Christ is king.
A man believed to be Somalian has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder after this knife attack in the Kinnaird Avenue area of North Belfast. The attack left the victim with significant injuries to his face, neck and back. The injured man, aged in his 40s, is right now in hospital. His condition is described as serious.
The defense rested its case, calling 6 witnesses over a span of around 2 days. Among the final witnesses is a 17-year-old who was asked to demonstrate what he said he saw in the moments leading up to the stabbing of Austin Metcalf. Karmelo Anthony did not take the witness stand to testify. So now we need to focus on what happens next. This morning will be those closing arguments for the state and for the defense, with the burden of proof resting on the prosecution.
With respect to Charlie Kirk, have you all taken any position since Charlie Kirk
Mr. Roy, we unequivocally condemned the murder of Charlie Kirk.
What about the listing of Charlie Kirk?
It is our position that TPUSA expresses views and vilifies other people based on immutable characteristics, exposing them to our listing.
Fighting also broke out among multiple groups of young men outside of a store. A large group of police officers eventually stepped in to break it up, and they were also seen making several arrests this morning. We've asked NYPD exactly how many people were arrested following the game, because we saw several men taken into custody. NYPD hasn't responded with an exact number of arrests or the charges they'll face.
Tonight, President Donald Trump becomes the first sitting United States president to attend an NBA Finals game. Longtime Knick fan, certainly liked what he saw here.
Brush stripes and bright stars through the perilous fights.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on board today's edition, Human Events Daily. We're here live on the great Real America's Voice Network. We're streaming around the world, around the globe. Today is June 9th, 2026, Anno Domini. And here we are, after we spent a week discussing the brutal murder and the police lack of response to Henry Novak in the UK. We've yet another brutal act of migrant violence in the UK, this time in Belfast, Northern Ireland, where there's an extremely harrowing video. And we're going to play a blurred version of that video. Because if you recall, we sent Kevin Posobiec over to Ireland a couple of weeks ago. It had mass protests going on. And the media was attacking him and attacking yours truly, saying, why are the Posobiec brothers obsessed with Ireland? Why are they obsessed with the migrants? What could it be? What could possess them to want to talk about this, you might ask? Here we have a video of a migrant attempting to behead this Belfast man there in the street when a group of heroes run up, get him off before police can even respond. A group of heroes run up and save his life. There's an invasion in your own lands. For Ireland, for the UK, for Europe, for the entire West. Understand what time it is. Understand what part of the movie you're in. I don't care what names you call us. I don't care what labels you write. I don't care what hit pieces you want to put up in any newspaper. You got SPLC. The SPLC won't even take Charlie Kirk's name off of their hate map after he was shot and killed. So Charlie Kirk was shot and killed because of the lies of the SPLC, but they won't take him off. They won't take him off the list. Why? Because what did Charlie do? He spoke the truth and he didn't care. So I don't care either. I don't care about your labels. I don't care about your narrative. You could shove it. They're chopping heads off in the street. They're killing sons. They're raping daughters. It has to stop, and enough is enough. We need full-on remigration, not just mass deportations, remigration. And I'm not talking just illegals. I'm talking about all these programs, all these specialists, travelists work at the Haitians. Get them out. Get them all out. We don't want them here. We don't need them here. We never needed them here. We never needed them here at all. And it has to stop. The blood is running in the streets. I'm not even going to sit there. I don't even want to have a conversation. I don't even want to have a conversation about, oh, this was done because then there was this. Just, it's enough. Enough is enough is enough. You can only push a people so far before they respond. And it's time to respond. Their time to respond is now. This is time for the cold rage that Nigel Farage was talking about. Now is the time for people to stand up to these anti-whites, to stand up for your families, stand up for your towns, stand up for your neighborhood, stand up for your country, stand up for your nation, and say we're done. We're completely done, and it's time for a response. Jack Posobiec, Human Events Daily, right back.
In our way, and our golden age has just begun.
This is Human Events with Jack Posobiec.
Now it's time for everyone to understand what America First truly means. Welcome to the Second American Revolution.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec, we're back live. Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice. Folks, I got a message out there. If you are a homeowner in America, you need to listen to this right now. The FBI has been warning about a type of real estate fraud on the rise called title theft. And your equity is the target. Here's how it works. Criminals forge your signature on a single document. They use a fake notary stamp. They file it with the county. And just like that, bam, on record, they own your home. Using your ownership, they can take out loans against your equity or even sell your property, and you won't know about it until foreclosure or collection notices show up in the mail. That's why I've partnered with Home Title Lock so you can protect your equity and find out today if you're already a victim. Use promo code POSO at HometitleLock.com and you'll get a free title history report and a free trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That is 24/7 monitoring of your title records, urgent alerts to any changes, and if fraud occurs, their U.S.-based restoration team will spend up to $1 million to fix it. Don't be a victim. Protect your equity today. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code POSO. We're very excited to have on our next guest. We've had him on many times. We always get asked to have him back on. His book is currently number 16 on the Amazon charts. Yes, that's right. I checked. It's called We Do a Little Preparation before we have guests on. It's Revolution by Eric Metaxas, the birth of the greatest nation in the history of the world. And yes, it is the super centennial version. Eric, how are you?
I'm great. It's funny you bring up the Amazon rank. The book has been selling so much, and I'm not kidding because President Trump just endorsed it, that they cannot keep it in stock. So when you look on Amazon, they're like, well, we can't ship it to you till, for 2 weeks or something. So people are not ordering it. It was number 3. It was number 3 on Amazon.
Right, because they won't even take, I know what you're talking about, they won't even take orders for it until they get it in stock, which is actually very annoying. And I've run into that before as well.
Yes, but I mean, people can get it anywhere else. But the good news is it has been selling like crazy. I know the president's endorsement had something to do with that. But I've just been talking about it everywhere. I'm excited about it, very excited about it, Jack. And it fits into the narrative of what you were just talking about. When I wrote this book, my goal was just to write a kind of a galloping, wonderful history of the birth of America. What happened 250 years ago? There's not one volume where you can just say, here, read this. This is the whole story, from the run up to Lexington and Concord and the whole war. How did it happen? What are the stories? Who are the heroes? That was my goal in writing the book. And that's what I started to do. But in the course of writing it, people kept saying, oh, you're writing a book on the revolution. What's your angle? And I said, I have no angle. I'm just going to tell the story because, frankly, Americans need to know the story. Most of us have forgotten it, whatever. We need to know this. This is not optional. This is on the test. Every American needs to know this. So that's why I'm writing the book. But in the course of writing it, over and over and over again, I saw things. I said, how come we don't all know this? And the bottom line is the Christian roots of the founding of the United States of America are everywhere. They are inescapable. Every single person involved, including the ones that we think weren't so Christian, every one of them got the narrative. We are declaring independence from an earthly king, and we are declaring our dependence on the King of Kings. That's the only way this can succeed. All the founders understood that the Constitution, this way of doing things cannot work unless people are moral and religious. They all got that. And so the reason the American Revolution succeeded and the French Revolution dramatically did not succeed and ends in a bloodbath that replaces a king with a dictator emperor is because we looked directly to God. That is so inescapable that it just made me crazy as I'm doing the research. I thought, how come every American doesn't know this? This is not a Christian point of view. This is history. Every single one of the players involved in the story understood this narrative, understood the only way we could possibly even hope to succeed is by looking to God in everything, by trying to do what he's calling us to do. So that overwhelmingly becomes at the heart of the book, even though that's not, sort of what the book's about. The book is just this great story. But if you read it, you're going to wonder, how have I not known this? And of course, you haven't known it because they haven't taught it in schools. You're not going to hear it on PBS. So that's kind of why I'm really excited about getting this book out, because America, we're overdue in really understanding this. And by the way, it just happens to be true.
Well, I love the fact that you're doing it in such a way. We are getting our family and our two young boys very, very wrapped up in so much American history as it comes to the 250th. They love hearing stories about George Washington. They love hearing stories about the founders. And we actually had this video that was going around, one of those short reels that you put up. And we were at the reflecting pool. We went down to see the president. He's redone it and check it out, the status on Friday night. And my son makes it, because I was making a joke. I said, oh, could we go swimming in it? I heard it's a pool. My son goes, no, we can't. But he goes, but Daddy, and it's off the top of his head, he goes, you could swim in the Potomac like John Quincy Adams. And it's just off the top of his head. And so many people are commenting, how does your son know about that? It's because that's the type of stories that we share with the kids on a regular basis. Because as it turns out, our founders were incredible people and the stories are amazing.
No, it's so funny because what I keep saying to people is that if you went around in 1960, anywhere Main Street America, and put a microphone in somebody's face and asked them, they knew all of this stuff. Everybody in America knew all the players, Nathan Hale, Henry Knox, Samuel Adams, down the line, all these stories and all this stuff. It was part of common culture. It has drifted out of the culture in our lifetime. It's why we were, on the lip of the abyss a couple of years ago before President Trump got back in, because we have forgotten this stuff. So I feel like it's an assignment for every American this summer.
But Eric, the only thing I would ask though, was it forgotten or drifted, or was it pushed out of our culture?
All three. I mean, obviously,
Yes.
and I know it was pushed out, mainly pushed out. But so it makes it harder to remember when you're not being reminded of it, right? And so, there's some families, they know all about this stuff, but most Americans have missed it. It's not in the culture. It's not in the schools. I mean, I learned this stuff in 5th grade, but when you move on, you forget unless the culture is reminding you, unless everybody is into this, celebrating this. But, the liberal elites decided we cannot celebrate America. They're wringing their hands. If anybody had the misfortune of seeing Ken Burns' PBS series, which I forced myself to watch all 12 hours, some of it is good, but most of it is absolutely, you can't even make it up. They claim that democracy was created by the Iroquois. Now, I'm not joking. I'm not joking. They tell the sad story of the Native Americans that sided with the British. And by the time you're done watching this, you kind of feel like, yeah, there was a war and somebody won, but who's to say who was right? There's no joy. There's no joy in saying this is one of the greatest stories in the history of the world, that God created a people who wanted to govern themselves based on this crazy idea they got from the Bible that our rights come from God. I mean, it's inescapable, it's beautiful, it's true, but you're not getting this happy version, this heroic version. It's kind of like if somebody made a remake of Rocky, and by the time it was over, you're like, yeah, 2 guys had a fight, and I don't know who the good guy was. Like, they both had a point of view. That's the liberals. They cannot rejoice in America. They cannot celebrate America. They have to flagellate themselves and be guilty and say, yeah, we don't know anything. And so here's some stories, but we don't really see a good guy. That to me is so dramatically different from what my research basically showed me, stuff that I'd never seen before, which is including that the British elites were godless and wicked and cruel and cynical and corrupt. I had never quite seen that, Jack. And the Americans were like very serious, virtuous Christians. Now, again, maybe not everybody, but overwhelmingly that's the case with the elites in America who are fighting this war. George Washington, John Adams, they knew that if we don't fight this war God's way, we want to honor God in how we fight. The British were just the opposite, because the Americans actually believed in God. God is with us in this noble cause, and if we honor him, he'll honor us. That's covenant theology. So it's the kind of stuff like every single American should know this. Like we know who played last night. Was it the Knicks? We know, everybody American knows stuff. We need to know this. We used to know this. We need to relearn it.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, look, growing up in the Philadelphia region, every field trip was Valley Forge or Independence Hall or the Franklin Institute, and you're inundated with it. It's just all around you. And so people say, Posobiec, where'd you get all this stuff? I said, I thought this was what we all learned as kids. Right. I thought this is how we were supposed to live. I thought this was what it meant to be an American. And then you get to college and all the rest, and you see that it's not quite such. It's not quite so. And I said, oh gosh, I guess I'm the only one who actually, believed it and actually thought that we should probably continue the project that these great men put forward. And, you talk about, I've said it before again and again, but my wife and I, we got engaged at Valley Forge. We had our wedding in a church right next to Valley Forge. Right in Washington Chapel. So, I mean, this is something that my parents also got married in a church.
I didn't know
not the same
this.
church,
This
but
is amazing.
Yeah, church down the road.
This. Wow.
Yeah, church down. My parents got married, met at Valley Forge, married in a church down the road from where we got married. So it's just always been something that's been very, very personal for us, and a huge part of our personal story that we always felt was tied to the legacy of the founders, and always thought was tied to the legacy of those first veterans, those veterans who, if not for them going through that winter and going through those dark moments when they didn't have boots or money or food in many cases, and said, you know what, we're going to keep going anyway, even though we've lost New York and Boston and Philadelphia and all the rest of it, we're going to keep going, and maybe we'll even cross the river on Christmas night, because we think that we are actually doing the right thing with God's providence. Hold on, right back. New book out by Eric Metaxas, Revolution. Incredible piece, Human Events Daily.
About influencers. These are influencers, and they're friends of mine. Jack, Posobiec. Where's Jack? Jack, who's done a great job.
All right, folks. Jack Posobiec, Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice. Folks, as we close in on the election and you see more and more shocking events happening around the world and even at home, I don't believe it's all a coincidence, and neither should you. Plus, as society faces additional challenges. We see what's going on. We'll be talking Iran in just a little bit, but we know that that is going to push, that's going to have an effect on those gas prices. It just will. We also know about the debt that's out there, the rising interest rates, the labor disputes, other things that are happening around the world. Keep in mind that these factors further strain our economy with escalating global tensions, threatening and disrupting vital supply chains. There's a reason why so many patriots preserve their wealth with gold, because it stands on its own as a beacon of stability. And over the last 5 years, it's almost doubled in value. Allegiance Gold has done things the right way from the beginning, so it's no coincidence that they've earned the highest trust ratings in the precious metals industry, 5 stars with TrustLink and an A+ in the Better Business Bureau. Allegiance Gold can now protect your IRA or 401k with physical gold and silver, or you can have it delivered securely to your doorstep. Get up to $5,000 in free silver on a qualifying investment when you go to protectwithposo.com or call 844-577-POSO. Don't risk your financial future betting against these forces. Act today. Protectwithposo.com. That's protectwithposo.com. We're on with Eric Metaxas, his new book, Revolution. I love this book because what you're doing is fighting back against an entire culture that's calling upon us to hate our country, to hate our history, to say America's 250th. Oh, it's, you know, it's a mixed bag. You know, it's there's so much stuff that was bad and stuff that we're working on. This, of course, is the progressive narrative. What you're doing is going back and saying, no, it's not true. It's not true at all. It's always been an incredible revolution, a revolution for freedom, a revolution for God, a revolution in the history of man. And in fact, we should embrace the American Revolution and the founding fathers. This is why, by the way, you go to places like Monticello that have been totally captured by the cultural Marxists, that they will sit there and do everything they can to undercut Thomas Jefferson's legacy. And we were at Mount Vernon recently, and I was kind of comparing notes between there and Monticello, sort of keep looking at it all with a critical eye. They're still pretty good at Mount Vernon, but I'm keeping an eye on them, Eric. I think you know why.
Well, listen, not to celebrate America is to be insane. And that's why I wrote the book. I said, Americans just need to know the facts. When you know the facts, there's no way that you think like, oh, it's a mixed bag. That's like saying the Bible is a mixed bag. Oh, yeah, there's some people in there did some bad stuff. Like, it's the Bible, like the overall narrative. This is God's story. And frankly, America is God's story. And again, Jack, I didn't know this as clearly as I know it now. Having done the research, it is inescapable. This is not like a Christian book. This is an American history book that tells the story, and it is inescapable that at the heart of everything, I mean, I'm just looking here at a page, Samuel Adams, one of these great heroes, he gives a speech on the steps of Independence Hall the day before they sign the official copy of the Declaration. And in the speech, he says, we have this day restored the sovereign. In other words, we've rejected the earthly king and we've accepted God as our king. This is a member of Congress speaking to members of Congress. This is not a Bible study. And he is declaring what they're doing. They all understood we're going back to the Sinai covenant. We're going to be directly under God. And I just find it amazing that this is American history, and most Americans don't know this. And so I said, I'll put it all in a book because it's kind of high time. We're at a point where, frankly, every American needs to know this. And if you know this, you're going to be so thrilled that you're an American, that you're going to say, how can I give back? And exactly that's what we should be thinking. How can I give back? How can I help keep the republic? The first way you can help is by knowing these stories, knowing the names. The story of Nathan Hale. When I was at Yale in the 80s, and there's a statue of Nathan Hale there. And I thought to myself, this guy, there was a time when this brilliant, super Christian young man was willing to give his life for the nation. And for a long time, he was known as one of the great heroes of the revolution. There's a chapter in my book about him where he's being hanged by the British. He says, my only regret is that I have but one life to give for my country. The nobility, it is so beautiful. We used to have a country of people who knew that and who rejoiced in that, in the nobility of that, the ideas that formed this country. And I think we have a lot of people that they're simply unaware of it, or we've forgotten it. And I wrote the book I wanted to be kind of a fun telling of it, but we do kind of need to know this. This is not extra credit. Every American needs to know this stuff.
And Eric, I wish that I could take this book, and maybe I'll have to contact Bill Pulte and have him get it disseminated throughout the intelligence ranks, because when I joined the intelligence community as a military intelligence officer in the Navy, for me, Nathan Hale was a role model, an inspiration. Someone he infiltrates occupied New York City, goes up against the British lines. He's passing the letters, getting the intelligence, ends up getting caught, and we of course have tributes. He is seen as the father of America's intelligence services. And we have tributes to him everywhere. But you meet these intel officers today, you meet these people in the IC, and they don't think like that. They think that America is just one nation among other nations, right. That it's this Barack Obama kind of rhetoric. Oh, we believe in exceptionalism the way the Greeks believe in exceptionalism.
Yeah.
No. And that's not to take anything away from the Greeks, by the way, Eric.
Completely different story. Yeah, listen, speaking as a Greek, okay, who is proud to be Greek, you can't compare that. America is God's idea in the history of the world. There has literally never been a nation like it. We ought never to have succeeded, except with God's help we did. And all through my book, I'm quoting people that they say that they knew that this was God's idea of government, that this is a sacred cause, and that we are privileged to be able to be involved in the sacred cause. And it's what kept them strong when things were so bleak at Valley Forge, as you mentioned. The British, completely different story. They were just corrupt, cynical elites who made fun of the faith of the American colonists. I never saw that. They were happy in their sin. The counterpart of George Washington on the British side, General Howe, openly had a mistress. Everyone knew he had a mistress. They just mocked, it's almost like the Hollywood elites going to war against, a community of Christians in Oklahoma. The cultural divide,
the aristocracy.
Was exactly dramatic cultural divide.
We've got to run. Tell people again what the name of the book is, where they can get it.
The book is Revolution: The Birth of the Greatest Nation in the History of the World. My website has 3 places where you can get it: ericmetaxas.com. You should be able to get it anywhere, but if you want it by Father's Day, go to my website, ericmetaxas.com.
Makes a great gift for dads, and even for dads to their sons. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back. Human Events Daily.
Jack? Where's Jack? Where is he? Jack, I want to see you. Great job, Jack. Thank you. What a job you do. We have an incredible thing. We're always talking about the fake news and the bad, but we have guys, and these are the guys who should be getting Pulitzers.
All right, Jack Posobiec, we're back. Human Events Daily. Real America's Voice now. We knew that we were going to talk about Iran today. That's why we booked our next guest, Tom Sauer, U.S. Navy Special Operations veteran. But we didn't know that the news would break just before the show today from the president himself announcing that an Apache helicopter had been shot down by Iranian forces. Go now to Tom. Tom, you're familiar with the region. You're familiar with the order of battle there. What do we know about this situation and this incredible operational rescue of the aircrew?
Yeah, man, this is pretty historic. So what you had was at night, you had an AH-64 Apache, arguably the greatest attack helicopter ever, that went down right around the strait, not too far from Oman. And those 2 Army pilots were in the water for a couple of hours. But it was really interesting was because what makes this historic is you had a unmanned surface vessel, a Corsair made by Saronic, which is one of the hot new, really impressive companies out there right now in the defense tech space. And this unmanned boat went and picked him up and brought him home. It's part of what's called Task Force 59, which is all unmanned systems, AI and whatnot. And specifically, the service level is Task Group 56.1. But what's really cool about this, though, is that it also highlights there's a lot more going on than just a couple of autonomous or, remotely piloted boats. These aren't remotely piloted. These are semi-autonomous. But we've got all sorts of really cool tech that is all over the Strait of Hormuz. So, for example,
So Tom, I don't want to bury the lead on this. I want people to understand that. So they're in the water for a couple of hours. They get picked up, found and picked up, not by U.S. Navy SAR. This is an unmanned vessel that actually is able to locate them and pick them up in this. And you said the Strait of Hormuz?
Yeah, it's right in the strait. Yeah, a robot
Right in the strait.
boat. Let's say, yeah. I mean, if it was a Corsair. That's the name of it. The Corsair, made by Saronic. It's not that big. I want to say it's about 20 feet long or so, and multi-mission, usually for observation, whatnot. But it pulled up to them, and I guess those two pilots were able to get out of the water, and it took them home, which is pretty amazing. I mean, it really is pretty amazing. We've got all sorts of cool robots and everything that's on the sea, above it, and underneath it too. So. Yeah, it's really an amazing
this
thing.
Is a situation. No, it's amazing, but at the same time, we do have to talk about the fact that Iran did make this strike. Iran did, and the president has acknowledged. Of course, people have pointed out that the president could have said it was a training accident, could have said it was a malfunction. He's coming out now and saying that yes, in fact, it was the Iranians that did this. What does that mean for the strategic calculus going forward?
Look, I had a similar discussion yesterday with Orrin McIntyre, and what it comes down to, man, is, look, Trump wants to get a peace deal, not only because it's the right thing to do, but also just, even out of political self-interest. So I think something's got to give here. Either, the Iranians see the light, or we might have to start hammering them again. And this is just me sharing my personal opinion, is once that leadership has personal consequences imposed on them, or the threat of that, and what I mean by that is that, we took out the entire Iranian government's upper echelon. And now a lot of the middle echelon folks are now in these senior jobs. And some of those folks who now just are newly promoted due to attrition, might like their new positions. And they probably also enjoy they value their lives. So I imagine that if they keep this up, that something bad is going to happen to a lot of people, and it won't necessarily be bridges and infrastructure or anything like that. It could be, very well could be. But I think more likely is we're just going to start killing them. And then it's like, okay, you're dead now. All right, who else wants to come up and say that they don't want a peace deal? That can happen.
Well, and there certainly have been, a number of rumors flying around about either IRGC commanders or potentially even the supreme leader as well being targeted. And one of the things that I keep hearing from administration officials and others is that it's what we're really seeing now is a split between the leadership, the hardliners who, predominantly in the IRGC, who are making these attacks, trying to derail the peace process. Yeah. And then you've got moderates and pragmatists in more the religious side and even the civilian side, of course, who are saying, hey, we want this deal because we want to stay in place and we don't want to get unalived.
Yeah, that's a good point. It could be targeting those IRGC commanders because there are, obviously, command and control has been wildly fractured. And I'm willing to bet that there are elements within the IRGC, especially along the coastline, that doesn't have great communications with Tehran. And they might just be smiling and nodding to whatever Tehran says and just doing their own thing. Keep in mind, we had Japanese soldiers still fighting in the Philippines and Guam for 20, 30 years, right? So, it's not quite that extreme of a scenario, but it could be some people who said, we really don't care what this new puppet government says. We're going to keep fighting the great Satan or whatever. You know what I mean? So that could happen
that's how
too.
the IRGC recruits. They recruit for the people who are most loyal, who are most committed to the revolution, who are most committed to their form of Islam. That's exactly why the IRGC exists. And this is something that people need to understand about the IRGC. Is they don't exist just to protect or defend Iran. They're not there to defend the Iranian economy. They're not there to defend the oil. They're there to defend the Islamic revolution and to keep it going at all costs. That means the regime itself. And anything they have to do, like mining the strait, which of course the economic guys don't want, they're more than happy to do so because it keeps the regime in place.
Yep, that's very true, man. We'll have to see what happens, but I think something's going to give here eventually. So,
Tom, just kind of switching gears on that, President Trump, of course, shaking up the national security team. We know that Tulsi Gabbard, it's her last month as DNI. Bill Pulte, someone that I know that you have interacted with on Twitter for years, who has been a student of Scott Adams as well as a businessman in his own right. What do you think it means having a businessman come in with President Trump being a businessman himself coming into the national security space? A lot of people saying, "Oh, there's no experience," but President Trump pointing out that, yeah, you said the same thing about me.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. And also keep in mind that, we do want to see some outsiders. Like, these jobs, these political appointments are meant to be political oversight. So what is, Bill Pulte's greatest qualification? He has the trust and confidence of the president of the United States. And when it comes to the intelligence community, that is absolutely paramount. When I saw that there was 21, maybe a couple dozen, current former or retired admirals and generals and intelligence folks saying he's a bad choice, that's how I know he's a good choice. And frankly, I even knew personally some of the retired 4-stars on there. One of them was an old family friend. And I saw him yeah, of course you'd say that. Yeah, I'm not surprised at all. Because frankly, it's a lot of the business as usual deep state types that were so hell-bent on making sure one of their own are there. And keep in mind, Jack, is that, maybe your audience isn't really aware of this, but what is the real purpose of ODNI, the Director of National Intelligence? I know you know, but, is that for your audience, though, is that it was created after 9/11 because of intelligence failures. We arguably could have prevented 9/11 had the CIA and the FBI been sharing information. The purpose of DNI, of ODNI, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, is to be a clearinghouse for information, right? The CIA, FBI, and the other, 14 or 15 or other intelligence agencies feed all their information there. That information is synthesized, processed, disseminated out properly. So it's not an active arm. It doesn't do what CIA, DIA, or FBI does. It's a clearinghouse of information to deconflict intelligence and present everything best to the president. I'm not saying that's not an important job, but it's not the same as what the FBI director, CIA director, et cetera, does. That's not what their role is.
And here's the way I look at it, too, is you want someone who isn't familiar with the right way of doing things because they're not beholden to the process. They're not someone who's come through the process. That was the whole reason that so many people got behind President Trump in the first place, because the process had gotten stilted, had gotten stale, and they wanted to bring in a disruptor. My whole point was with Bill the Bulldog Pulte, that's exactly what President Trump is signaling here, that he wants to say, we're going to disrupt the process. We're going to have someone go and look at every single way that the intelligence cycle is done, from the collections all the way on the ground, all the way up to the president's daily brief, to figure out what can we do to make this better. And by the way, they're doing it at a time of active military operations. And this Apache shootdown certainly speaks to that. That's why it is not appropriate for the United States Senate to be playing games with his appointments right now. Tom Sauer, last moment to you.
Hey, no, thank you very much. And a great point as well is that keep in mind that Tulsi Gabbard was not particularly qualified in that same sense. Yes, I mean, look, she was in the Army Reserves, she worked Medical Service Corps, as in support to medical services. I'm not diminishing that at all, but she was not an intelligence officer. She was not combat arms. I'm not diminishing her service. She's a congressman.
She was,
but she's going to give the straight scoop intelligence.
Tom Sauer, Thomas B. Sauer. Go give him a follow across X and all platforms. Right back, Human Events Daily.
So we're going to call this the Jack Posobiec Appreciation Hour. I can say confidently, I think Josh Shapiro would be the vice presidential nominee if it wasn't for Jack Posobiec. And that is, I'm being honest.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec back live here, Human Events Daily. Now, of course, we're talking about Iran. We're talking about the Strait of Hormuz, talking about these fluctuations, not just in the geopolitical environment, but also in the geoeconomic environment. And that's what matters so much to all of you. It matters to so much out there, to families, to your portfolios, managing your family's money. How can we do this? We've got Alex Abkarian on here. He's the COO of Allegiance Gold, and he's always so good to tell us what's going on and the latest, because Alex, I don't know about, I know about you, but I've been looking at some of these gold numbers this week, and I don't even think I've ever seen anything like it. Tell us what's been going on this last week in the gold and precious metals market.
So the conventional wisdom, Jack, is that whenever there's geopolitical turmoil, you would expect the yellow metal to increase in price. But here's what's been happening. Because this war is escalating and oil is involved, synthetically, that is increasing the value of the dollar index. So let me put it in a simple layman terms. Oil prices go up, dollar value increases, gold drops. This is expected in the short term. Why? Because if you look at the data in the last 40 years, every time we had a tension with a country in Middle East that is rich in oil, the first 3 to 6 months during the war, we see gold prices kind of take a step back and oil prices increase. Once the war is done, we see the opposite movement. This is what President Trump is talking about. He's talking about how that at some point oil prices are going to drop. And it's so difficult to time the market, folks. One of the things that we suggest for people to do is look at this as a buying opportunity, specifically in the gold market. But let's put gold aside for a second. There was a bloodbath in the NASDAQ earlier today. It dropped almost about 1,000 points. It came back up. It's down about 1%. And this is ahead of the big IPO that is expected this Friday.
So we're looking at that, and obviously you have the IPO coming up. But this has been a situation where people have, would you put it this way? Would you say that this could potentially be an introductory point, a tipping point, where if people haven't been in the precious metals market at all, haven't had it as part of their portfolio, would this actually be an opportunity to get in?
Absolutely. Here's why. In the last 2 years, gold has gone up very strongly. And we've had a lot of people saying, I feel like I missed the boat. I want to wait for a little bit of a retractment. See, here's what's interesting. If you study the gold bull market, it typically moves in a 10-year cycle. Right now, we're probably in the 5th inning, and nothing goes up in a straight line. So the opportunity for a lot of first-time investors is to increase the ounce basis. In other words, they're going to get a better buying opportunity. Now, here's another thing to keep in mind. Friday, the job numbers came out. 172,000 jobs, more than double the expected. May numbers were revised up. April numbers were revised up. That's a great news for the economy. But then we saw that the market also took a dip. So the whole point of gold is the preservation and preparation. You want to have some proper diversification. You don't want to bet the entire farm on gold, folks. No one does it. You just want to have some as a rainy day fund just in case we see the value of the dollar continue to erode, because the foundation and the fundamentals, we still see central banks buying. We talked about the Bank of Poland last time. What's interesting is you have the Czech Republic recently announced that they want to increase their buying. And China, we know that they're hoarding gold like no tomorrow because they're dumping U.S. Treasury bonds. So the big picture for a lot of first-time listeners is this. On one side, we have some positive economic numbers. Obviously, the World Cup is going to give us a lift in the job creation numbers. On the other side, we're seeing a little bit of a pessimism from CEOs and small to medium-sized businesses. Because let's face it, those are the ones that are being impacted with the short-term inflation. Tomorrow, we're going to get the data for inflation. Look, it is expected that inflation is going to get higher slightly. Don't freak out. Don't get confused. Kevin Warsh was nominated by President Trump for a specific reason. In his Congress conversation, he talked about potentially removing these one-time hit that is impacting the inflation. What that means is this. We know that oil prices drove inflation numbers higher because before the war, the math was on the right trajectory. Wages were growing faster than inflation. But because of this blip on the data, it's affecting inflation. So short term, we're expecting that the Federal Reserve will keep the interest rate as is. Once they reevaluate how to look at inflation, there will be a lot more case to lower interest rates as President Trump wanted at the beginning of the year.
So that's coming in now with Warsh taking the reins over the Federal Reserve. Do you then think that they're going to be able to pair that in? Because obviously the president's looking at this. We know the Fed's also going to be looking at, of course, at the trading, at the currency trading out there. They're going to want to stretch the dollar as much as they can. But at the same time, they know that they're still fighting this fight against inflation.
Absolutely. Historically, the way they used to fight against inflation is to raise interest rates. If they do that, that's going to break the economy. And we know that there's a very minimal chance of doing that. That's why we got to get inflation under control. So, look, I'm a former banker. We used to finance publicly traded companies, buy and sell businesses. From time to time, there is this one recurring or non-recurring scenario. So if we look at it legitimately and we take out those high prices of oil, that would benefit the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. What's the benefit? Short term, we're going to get some relief, folks. But long term, that's not going to be great for the dollar. So at the beginning of the year, we were forecasting 3 rate drops. That was one of the headwinds for gold prices to go sideways between 4,300 to about 4,800. Once we get back on a path of lowering interest rates, that's going to be very much positive for the price of gold, which is why I tell our listeners, have some exposure to gold, have some diversity, not only gold, but also some silver.
So folks are out there, they're listening, they're seeing all this, they're tracking everything. They're saying, I haven't gotten into this yet. I'm looking at it. I'm interested. I'm considering it. How do they take the next step?
Look, it's very simple. You can either go to protectwithposo.com or call us directly at 844-790-9191. That's 844-790-9191. And make sure to mention the word POSO. Why? That's going to qualify you for 2 offers. Number 1, if you're anyone who has actually served the military, any of the branches, police department, fire department, we salute you. We want to thank you with our America the Beautiful 5-ounce coins with whatever purchase you make. Second, if you roll over anything above $50,000, you're going to qualify for $2,500 in free silver. Anything above $100,000, you'll qualify up to $5,000 in free silver. I want you to take advantage not only of the dip, but also with these additional silver. So as prices are forecasted to go up in the next couple of years, you actually have something that will appreciate and preserve and grow your portfolio.
Check it out, folks. Protectwithposo.com. Alex, thanks so much for joining us yet again.
Thanks for having me, Jack. Take care.
All right. And folks, now we are getting breaking news out of Texas, where just a few moments ago, we were told that the Karmelo Anthony trial, which, of course, is regarding the stabbing death of Austin Metcalf, we're told that the verdict is in. The deliberations only took place for less than 3 hours. The jury has now begun returning, this according to NBC 5 out of Dallas. The jury has begun returning to the courtroom with a verdict. The verdict is expected to be read momentarily. Now, of course, as we know, there is no live stream. There is no cameras in there. There is no information. So the jury is coming in. The jury is now coming in where they are going to be seated. We're also told that Karmelo Anthony's parents were seen leaving the courtroom in tears just moments before the jury went to deliberate. So we don't know if they've been told something, if they have heard something. Typically in these cases, you don't know the verdict until it is actually read by the jury foreman down there in Frisco, Texas. And let's remind folks that this all goes back to that rainy afternoon at a track meet where Karmelo Anthony was asked, and we're told, according to witnesses, 15 times to please leave, that you don't go into another team's tent, that you don't sit under that you don't bother rival teams when you're at a track meet or any sporting event. He did not do so. There was testimony that Austin Metcalf gave him a shove or a tap on the shoulder, asking him to get up. But during that time, Karmelo Anthony said, "Touch me and see what happens," and was seen rummaging through his school bag. And also, one of the, to my mind, most shocking pieces of information that's come out in all of this is the autopsy. And in that autopsy, medical examiner Dr. Elizabeth Ventura, and I want to read this, told jurors that the knifing left Metcalf with a gaping 2-inch wound, and that the knife went so deep that it pierced the bone of his chest and the right side of his heart. Now, I'm not on the jury. You know, I haven't sat through the trial because we couldn't. It wasn't live streamed. But to me, that level of force speaks to intent. That level of force that you may be using for, that doesn't seem like defense. That seems like an attempt to kill. If you're going to chop, to slice, to stab at someone that hard, that's not a defensive gesture. No, that's murder. That's a murder gesture. So, of course, we have to, that's all the time we have. I want to thank Real America's Voice for giving me a couple extra minutes here to talk about the breaking news. And, of course, I'm sure Real America's Voice will be back with that verdict as soon as it comes in. Jack Posobiec, ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have my permission to lay ashore.